Welcome back to the Warrior's Garden. Today we're going over my career path to becoming a United States Army officer, which was ROTC. One of you guys asked about it, so we're going to talk about it. Let's do our scripture reading and then we'll hop into the video. Today's scripture reading is Ephesians 3:20 and 21. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. This might be a little bit longer of a video, so we're going to break it into four main parts. We're going to have what is ROTC, we'll explain that. Then we're going to go over how it works. Then we're going to talk about my 4 years. And then finally, we'll talk about, what would I do differently? Was it good? Was it bad? My experience and my thoughts about my experience, I guess. Before we do that though, everything you see in today's video, just like all of my other videos, are my thoughts and my opinions. They do not reflect anything of the Army's thoughts, the Army ROTC's thoughts or opinions, or the Department of Defense's thoughts or opinions. So again, all my thoughts and opinions, not the military's, not the Department of Defense, not ROTC's. So clear that up and we'll talk about what is ROTC now. All right, so something I forgot to mention to you guys. I'm going to have pictures overlaid throughout here so you don't have to look at my boring face the whole time. People's faces are blurred, not because they're some tactical cool operator, but because I didn't get to ask everybody if they were okay with being in the video. So out of respect for them, I'm going to blur their faces. That's why they're fuzzed out. All right, so what is ROTC? At the end of the day, it's just another way to commission as United States Army officer. So there's two different ways you can kind of go about the Army from a pretty broad perspective. You can either enlist and be on that side of things, or you can be an officer and be on that side of things. But to become an officer, you need a degree, a 4-year degree, and then you have to have some form of commissioning source to then, commission as an officer. And ROTC is one of the three main ways to do that. You have West Point or the United States Military Academy, or same thing, it's known as the United States Military Academy, excuse me. You have OCS, Officer Candidate School, and then you have ROTC. Those are the three main ways, and ROTC is what I did. So it stands for Reserve Officer Training Corps, and what it is 4 years of college tagged along with like a part-time military experience. And when you graduate at the end of your 4 years, if you've completed all the requirements for ROTC, then you'll commission as a new lieutenant in the Army in some function. Unlike West Point, where you're guaranteed and have to go active duty, ROTC, you can commission into the reserves, the National Guard, or active duty, depending on your merit and how you rank up against your peers. So we'll talk about that a little bit more and what that looks like, how ROTC is kind of broken down. So let's talk about that. All right, so let's break down ROTC and what it looks like. Keep in mind, it's going to be different for every program. Everybody's got their own tweaks to how ROTC is run, but generally speaking, all programs will follow the same rough curriculum, for lack of better terms. So what does your 4 years look like? Over your 4 years, there's going to be some things that remain the same and some things that change. So let's go over the things that stay the same first. You'll have a military science minor, and to complete that requirement, you'll have military science classes all 4 years. So you'll have class freshman year, sophomore year, junior, and senior year, and throughout that, you'll learn about the military and different roles of what you might be doing as an officer. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the year-by-year breakdown, but you'll have a class each year, each semester. After that, you'll have PT every year, every semester. And the days that you do it might vary by your school. For my school, we did it Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the mornings, but you'll have PT. You'll also have labs, or so at least we call them labs. I'm not sure what everyone else will call them, but that's the practical exercise version of your class, just like, I guess, a normal science lab, except for instead of doing science, you're out in the woods doing land navigation, or you're doing platoon sticks lanes where you're running an attack or defense or whatever the case might be for that week. You have those all 4 years, and you'll attend them all 4 years. After that, you have things called FTX, or field training exercise, and you do 2 of those each year. You do one in the fall and you do one in the spring, and those will look a little bit different. Mainly, the one in the fall is more is more internal. It's just with your school mainly, but you're doing just fun stuff. You're doing rappel course, obstacle course. you're shooting the Army qualification course. Oh, what else? You're doing land navigation. It's like a morale booster, essentially. You're getting everybody excited to do Army things, sleeping outside, sleeping in the barracks, whatever it is, things that people have never done before. And that's kind of what the first field training exercise is geared towards. The second field training exercise in the spring is more geared towards your MS3s or your juniors. So MS1 is a freshman, 2 sophomore, 3 junior, 4 senior. But your spring FTX is geared towards your juniors and getting them ready for advanced camp, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. But it's where all the MS3s are going to get split up from the rest of their school, and they'll get put into a random different school, and they'll have to run platoon lanes and be the leadership. They'll have to be a platoon leader and a squad leader or a PSG, and they'll have to show up their leadership skills while being evaluated by another school's cadre that they've never met or never at least been um, had major influence with. So it's pretty unbiased. And outside of that, there's some other things that happen every year. There's a military ball that most schools do. And then another main thing that happens every year is there's a thing called Ranger Challenge. That's a team-based event where you can try out for it, and you do stuff like shooting. You do like a one-rope bridge. You have a big ruck march. You have an obstacle course. There's different things that you do, but it's a big team event. Some other events that happen in ROTC throughout the year is there's Northern Warfare. It's not everywhere, I know, because it's a winter event, but it's very similar to Ranger Challenge. It's a team event where you go and do winter activities and like survival type stuff. And then you're going against another team and other schools, and whoever wins comes out on top. But after that, there's Ranger Buddy Challenge, which is a two-man team version of Ranger Challenge. And then there's other stuff that happens. There's Color Guard. I don't know. There's other programs inside of ROTC that you can do, and that kind of help set you up and make you more prepared and more well-rounded as a cadet. And throughout your 4 years, you're being graded and evaluated against all your other peers nationally and locally just in your school. So they do that by creating a thing called an Order of Merit list. Now, this Order of Merit list, it takes into effect a lot of different things, and it's constantly changing. So the way I was graded is different for the kids after me and the kids before me, but it's roughly the same. Just how they say what's worth how many points is what's changing. So like your grades matter, what your degree is matters, how well you do at advanced camp, which again we'll talk about in a little bit, matters. If you did Ranger Challenge, that matters. How many years you did it. So all those things matter. They all get added up and then put into an order of merit, and that's kind of how you get racked and stacked against all your peers. All right, so let's talk more about each year, kind of a more breakdown of what it looks like, your roles and responsibilities. So your freshman, your MS1 year, you don't really have any major roles at all. You're just there to learn, absorb as much as you can, and get prepared for the coming years. You're learning about how the Army works. You're learning about rank structure. You're learning about a squad size versus a platoon size and how the Army is broken up. And you're really just trying to, like I said, soak up as much knowledge as you can. You don't have any major expectations. You're just there trying to get ready for your next year. Your MS2 year or sophomore year, again, you have all the same stuff that we talked about earlier, your class, your lab, your PT, but now you might have stepped into a little bit more of a leadership role. You might be a team leader or a squad leader, and you're helping the MS3s, try and get them good reps when you do your labs, and you're trying to help them as best you can, leading PT in different ways, but you're stepping up into a little bit more of a leadership role. Your MS3 year, your junior year, this is where you kind of really hammer down on stuff, right? So you have advanced camp at the end of the summer, and we'll talk about that again. But you are really learning your platoon leadership roles as your platoon leader and your PSG. So you're probably going to be leading your platoon at your labs and trying to really hone in on your leadership skills. You've been trying to develop them, and you're learning all of your troop leading procedures and how to become an effective and efficient leader, or at least you should be. So between your junior year and your senior year, that summer, you have about a 30-day, about a month-long thing called advanced camp. And this is where you're going to be tested on everything that you've learned for the last 3 years. Your land navigation, your shooting, if you're able to rappel, if you're able to complete the confidence course, the obstacle course, you're going to be tested on all these things. And on top of that, your leadership capabilities being run with platoon sticks. This is at Fort Knox in Kentucky, and you're going to get assigned a random time essentially, and with a bunch of random people, you're going to get put into a platoon, and you're going to have to lead them, being graded by cadre who've never met you. So it's an unbiased way for people that have never met you to grade you, see what your leadership capabilities are, and then give you a score. And then that score goes into your order of merit that we talked about earlier, which helps rack and stack you against all your peers. So that's kind of a really short breakdown of what advanced camp is. Talk more about it if people want to know in the comments or whatever. Let me know. We can do a video just on advanced camp because it's a pretty big thing in your ROTC career. Okay, so now you've stepped into your MS4 year. This is more or less about like your platoon leadership level skills and more about you doing more admin things. So planning and executing the labs, the helping plan the training exercises that we talked about, your FTXs, and it's really you learning more about the paperwork side of being an officer and how to function and how to plan. So depending on what role you get in your MS4 year, it might look a little bit different for everybody, but essentially you're just planning and you're kind of just killing that last year, helping to prepare your MS3s as best you can for advanced camp before you commission and graduate. And then you graduate from college and you commission hopefully the same day, and that is what ROTC is in a nutshell. It's preparing you for the Army as an officer. And there's other things that you can do along the way. During the summers, there's different opportunities. If you've done well as a cadet and you rank pretty high in your OML, your school will often earn aerosol or airborne slots. There's different schools. You can go to Mountain Warfare. You can go to CTLT. It's like Cadet Troop Leading Training or something like that. I can't remember what it stands for. But these are all different summer events that you can go do. You can go all over the country and you go shadow a platoon leader in your CTLT and you see what the Army really does and looks like. All right, so let's talk more about my 4 years in ROTC. It's going to be a little different than probably anybody else's for the next 100 years, I don't know, however long until China decides to release another virus on us. But I was in ROTC, started in 2020, so during COVID. And so my ROTC career path, I guess, probably look a little bit different than what I was and was not allowed to do. However, I guess we'll get into that a little bit. So my freshman year, I showed up. I applied for a national scholarship. I got it. So I showed up on scholarship, which meant I was able to contract right away. And what contracting is basically me saying to the government, if you guys pay for my school, I'm guaranteeing to you guys I'm not going to quit. Otherwise, I'm going to pay you back this money. So by me contracting my freshman year, that allowed me to do a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I talked about CTLT and doing different training events and aerosol and airborne. You can't do those unless you're contracted because the Army just doesn't want to pay for you to go and do something if you're just going to quit later. So I contracted my freshman year, which allowed me to do a bunch of other stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do. So we'll talk about that. But so yeah, I got to Northern Michigan. Like I said, it was during COVID, so things were a little different. PT was super dumb. We had to wear masks and a bunch of other nonsense. But freshman year was fine, just learning. Like I said, I didn't really do a whole ton. I did Ranger Challenge and Northern Warfare and Ranger Buddy. I tried to do as much as I possibly could because, like anything else, ROTC is what you make of it. The more you do, the more you'll get out of it. So I tried to apply myself as much as possible my freshman year. Like I said, did those other things, did color guard, and that ended up paying off. I went home that summer and I got a call that they were going to be kind of doing this new program called Sage Eagle. It had happened a long time ago in the past, as far as I understand, but got dropped, and then it got picked back up for cadets to be allowed to go to it. It used to just be like a National Guard annual training event with Green Berets, but now they're going to bring some cadets. So I actually got to go and train with Green Berets for a month in my freshman summer between my freshman and sophomore year. But yeah, so I got a call from our captain at that time, and she just asked if I was interested in the opportunity. I said yes right away because I want to do special forces, and I was like, oh, this is a good chance for me to learn about it. So I said yes, got selected for it. And again, that goes back to I was able to do that because I was contracted. If I wasn't contracted, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But so I went to Fort Bliss and White Sands, I think was what it was, in New Mexico. And I did a training event there with Green Berets. It's their pre-deployment training, and I'll put pictures up and stuff through all this. But it's their pre-deployment training cycle. I was there with them for a month. They basically treated us like we were the force that they were training. So they taught us all their medical, their CQB, their um, vehicle infill and exfil, what happens if a vehicle goes down, a bunch of different stuff. They taught us and trained us, which is really cool. It was an awesome training experience. I just soaked up as much of that as I possibly could. So I did that my freshman year, and then my sophomore year started. That's when, or I think it was while I was actually at Sage Eagle, the Army issued the mandatory vaccine. I didn't get the vaccine. I was not going to get the vaccine, and still not going to get the vaccine. So I don't have the COVID vaccine, and I was worried I was going to get kicked out of ROTC. So because I didn't get the shot, I wasn't allowed to do a lot of stuff. My sophomore year, really wasn't allowed to do much. I wasn't allowed to travel in government vehicles. I wasn't allowed to go to our training exercise, our fall training exercise, or our spring training exercise. I wasn't allowed to do Ranger Challenge. I wasn't allowed to do Ranger Buddy Challenge, Northern Warfare. All those things I wasn't allowed to do. I had a religious exemption put in for the vaccine. Never heard back from it in my 4 years of ROTC. Still have not heard back from it. Obviously, it's been dropped at this point, but so yeah, I was not really allowed to do a lot my sophomore year. I somehow got my name put in still for a mountain warfare and airborne slot. I did receive those, and then I don't know if there was a mix-up or whatever, but essentially my colonel told me, you got the slot, but because you don't have the shot, you can't go to them. So I wasn't able to go and do those, which is my sophomore year was pretty bland. I didn't really get to do a lot. My junior year was a lot better. The beginning of it was still pretty rough. Wasn't really allowed to do a whole ton. I still couldn't go to our fall training exercise. Still couldn't do Ranger Challenge that year either. And excuse me, I did do Ranger Challenge my sophomore year. I think it was weird. I wasn't supposed to be there, but somehow I got there, and then they were just like, whatever, he's already here. So I didn't do it my junior year though. I was not allowed to do it then. And so yeah, the beginning of my junior year was pretty slow. The end of my junior year / middle of my junior year is where things kind of got cleared up with the shot. They no longer were requiring it, and I got to go to Spring FTX and do the training there. And then I put in for CTLT slot my junior year as well. Now that I was allowed to do these things, so I had advanced camp in the summer. That went pretty well for me. I don't know, maybe it was my year. I didn't think advanced camp was hard. I prepared a lot for it physically and mentally, and I studied a lot, read the Ranger Handbook a lot, and I enjoy that type of stuff. I wanted to do infantry. I liked the platoon tactics, so not only did I enjoy it, but not only did it make it easier that I enjoyed it, but I don't know, I like being outdoors, I like shooting, I like heights, so that type of stuff was fun, and I was able to do well and exceed at advanced camp, which then in turn helped me in my order of merit, especially after missing out on my entire sophomore summer, not being able to do these other schools to kind of rank myself up, and not being able to do Ranger Challenge and Ranger Buddy Challenge, all these things that would have added order to or merit to my list. I wasn't able to do those, but because I did well at advanced camp, it kind of made up for it in the end, I think. But so I went to advanced camp, and then after that, I got selected for CTLT in Germany. So I had 1 day between graduating from advanced camp, and then I flew to Germany the next day. That was a really cool experience. I got put with the 2CR, 2nd Cavalry Regiment, and I got put with a engineer platoon, and then also I jumped over to infantry platoon. But I just shadowed their platoon leader. It was an awesome experience. It was a lot of fun. I got to explore Germany. I got to see a lot of the world that I probably would never have gone and seen otherwise. I'm not huge on traveling necessarily. So it was a really cool experience. I got to shadow and see what an engineer platoon does in the field, and just kind of what their week-to-week platoon life looks like. And again, like I said, I got to go to Germany, so that was pretty cool. My senior year, I got selected for the staff position of S3, so I was our chief planning for operations. I planned all of our labs, helped plan our training exercises, our fall and spring training exercises. But I would essentially just plan what we would do, and then I had an assistant S3 with me who would help write our operation orders, and we'd get that checked off by our colonel and pass it down to the rest of the platoon, the underclassmen. But really, it's just training and trying to give as much time back to the underclassmen as I possibly could to get them ready in whatever way that looked like, whether that be them coming and asking me questions or me trying to set up different things to help them, whether they went through or not all the time. But that was my MS4 year. And then I commissioned and graduated. So, all right. So my thoughts, a little recap on ROTC And was it worth it, I guess? At the end, yes. No matter what you commission from, you end up the exact same thing, a second lieutenant in the United States Army. So again, whether it's West Point, OCS, or ROTC, the end goal is what matters and state, being an officer in the Army, and that's what you're going to get from all three of them. So it's really just the opportunities that are afforded to you and what your life is going to look like during those 4 years. During ROTC, I was able to have a pretty normal college experience and go home during the summers and kind of do more of what I wanted than if I would have gone to West Point. But you also kind of lose out on some of the opportunities that you have from going to West Point, and you're not guaranteed active duty. And so there's different little ups and downs to each of them. But at the end of the day, besides the COVID crap, ROTC was fun. It was a good time. I enjoyed what I did there. There's some stuff that wasn't fun. There's some things I didn't enjoy, but ultimately it is what you make of it. Like I said earlier, just like anything else in life. And the more you put into ROTC, the more you'll get out of it, and the more you'll be rewarded from it, or should be, at least, if things go fairly, which is not always the case. But if you dedicate a lot of time to ROTC and trying to become the best cadet, because that's what you are while you're there, cadet that you can, I think it'll ultimately make you a better officer when you graduate and commission. So ROTC, it was fun. It was a good experience. I'm definitely glad and ready to move on from it and ready to be done. Ready to start my career as an officer. But it was a good time. I can always answer more questions if people have questions. So just put them in the comments if you're wondering more about ROTC or any part of it, I guess, while it's still fresh in my brain. But yeah, that was my career path to becoming a United States Army officer. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.